Chapter 7. The Syrian Trail. The trail to Damascus was long, hot, and dust-choked. Tarkad rode his horse alongside the lumbering camels of Arkad's caravan. For 10 days they traveled through the dry, rocky wilderness, stopping only at designated wells. At night the caravan guards kept watch under a sky filled with cold, brilliant stars. The wind would sweep through the canyons, carrying the distant howls of wild jackals that roamed the wastes. On the 11th day, the caravan reached a large oasis town near the Syrian border. The town was a chaotic crossroads filled with merchants, desert nomads, and travelers from distant lands. Tarkad, carrying his bag of trade gold, decided to explore the local marketplace. Near the center of the bazaar, a loud crowd had gathered around a dusty track. 10-1 on the red stallion from Damascus, a man shouted. Easy gold for anyone with the courage to bet. It was a camel race, and the betting was fast and furious. Tarkad watched as a local merchant won a small pile of silver coins in a matter of minutes. Tarkad's hand drifted to his purse. If I bet just 3 gold pieces, he thought, and the stallion wins, I will double my gold instantly. Arkad would be impressed by my quick profits. Surely, the goddess of good luck is smiling on me today. He took 3 gold coins out of his purse. But as he stepped toward the betting master, a heavy hand grabbed his shoulder. Tarkad spun around. Standing behind him was Dabasir, the tall, bony camel trader who was in charge of the caravan's pack animals. Dabasir's face was dark with disapproval. Put your gold back in your purse, boy, Dabasir said, his voice a low growl. I was just looking for a bit of luck, Dabasir, Tarkad protested. The odds are good. Dabasir dragged Tarkad away from the noise of the track, leading him into the quiet shade of a nearby olive grove. Luck? Dabasir scoffed. You think the goddess of good luck hangs around gambling rings? The gaming tables are built by tricksters to capture the gold of fools. The goddess of good luck does not favor chance. She favors action. Let me tell you about a merchant I once knew. He was looking to buy a flock of sheep. One evening, he returned to the city gates of Babylon only to find them locked for the night. A sick farmer approached him outside the walls, offering to sell his entire flock of 900 sheep at a very low price because he needed to return home immediately. It was dark, and the merchant could not count the sheep. He hesitated. He told the farmer he would count them in the morning and pay him then. The farmer pleaded, asking for just 2/3 of the price so he could leave, but the merchant procrastinated. During the night, the city guards opened the gates to let in a royal caravan. The local butchers saw the sheep, recognized the bargain, and bought the entire flock while the merchant was still sleeping. The merchant lost a massive profit because he delayed. The goddess of good luck loves the man of action, Tarkad. She loves the man who recognizes a good deal and closes it without delay. She flees from those who procrastinate, and she destroys those who trust in games of chance. Did Arkad teach you the 5th law of gold for nothing? Tarkad looked at the ground, feeling the sting of the truth. No. The 5th law says gold flees from those who seek impossible earnings or follow scammers. Exactly, Dabasir said, his expression softening slightly. I know this because I learned it the hard way. Did you know, Tarkad, that I was once a slave in Syria? Tarkad's eyes widened. You? A slave? Yes, Dabasir said, sitting on a flat stone. The hungrier you become, the clearer your mind works, and the more sensitive you become to the smell of food. When I was a young man, I learned my father's trade of saddle making. I worked with him in his shop and got married. Because I was young and not very skilled, I earned very little. It was barely enough to support my wonderful wife in a modest way. I wanted nice things that I couldn't afford. Soon, I discovered that shopkeepers would let me buy things on credit, trusting me to pay them back later even if I didn't have the money at the time. Being young and inexperienced, I didn't realize the danger. A person who spends more than he earns is planting the seeds of unnecessary self-indulgence, and he is guaranteed to harvest a storm of trouble and humiliation. So, I gave in to my desires for fine clothing. I bought luxury items for my good wife and our home that we simply couldn't afford. I paid what I could, and for a while everything was fine. But eventually I realized I couldn't stretch my earnings to cover both my living expenses and my debts. Creditors began chasing me down, demanding payment for my extravagant purchases. My life became miserable. I borrowed from my friends, but I couldn't repay them either. Things went from bad to worse. My wife went back to live with her father. I decided to leave Babylon and look for a new city where a young man might have better opportunities. For 2 years I lived a restless and unsuccessful life, working for caravan traders. Then I fell in with a group of likable robbers who roamed the desert, attacking unarmed caravans. Such actions were completely beneath the son of my honorable father. But I was seeing the world through a colored stone, and I didn't realize how far I had fallen. We were successful on our first trip. We captured a rich haul of gold, silks, and valuable merchandise. We took this loot to Jiner and quickly wasted it all. The second time, we weren't so lucky. Right after we had captured a caravan, we were attacked by the spearmen of a local tribal chief. The caravans paid him for protection. Our 2 leaders were killed, and the rest of us were taken to Damascus. There they stripped us of our clothing and sold us as slaves. I was bought for 2 silver coins by a Syrian desert chief. With my hair shaved off and wearing nothing but a loincloth, I didn't look any different from the other slaves. Because I was a reckless young man, I thought it was just an adventure. That changed when my master brought me before his 4 wives and told them they could have me as a eunuch. Then, I truly realized the complete hopelessness of my situation. These desert men were fierce warriors. I was completely at their mercy, with no weapons and no way to escape. I stood there in fear as those 4 women looked me over. I wondered if I could expect any pity from them. Sirah, the first wife, was older than the rest. Her face showed no emotion as she stared at me. I looked away from her, finding little comfort. The next wife was an arrogant beauty who looked at me as if I were a worm in the dirt. The 2 younger wives giggled, acting like the whole situation was an exciting joke. It felt like an eternity as I stood there waiting for my sentence. Each woman seemed to want the others to decide. Finally, Sirah spoke up in a cold voice. "We have plenty of eunuchs," she said, "but we have very few camel tenders, and the ones we do have are worthless. Even today, I need to visit my mother who is sick with a fever, and there is no slave I trust to lead my camel. Ask this slave if he knows how to lead a camel." My master immediately asked me, "What do you know about camels?" Trying hard to hide my desperate eagerness, I answered, "I can make them kneel. I can load them with cargo. I can lead them on long trips without letting them get tired. If necessary, I can even fix their saddles and gear." "The slave speaks confidently enough," my master observed. "If you want, Sirah, you can take this man to be your camel tender." So, I was handed over to Sirah. That very day, I led her camel on a long journey to visit her sick mother. I took the opportunity to thank her for saving me. I also told her that I wasn't born a slave, but that I was the son of a free man, a respected saddle maker in Babylon. I explained a lot of my story to her. Her response really caught me off guard, and I thought about her words for a long time afterward. "How can you call yourself a free man when your own weakness brought you to this point?" she asked. "If a man has the soul of a slave inside him, won't he eventually become a slave no matter how he was born, just as water always seeks its own level? And if a man has the soul of a free man inside him, won't he eventually become respected and honored in his own city, no matter what bad luck he faces?" For over a year, I was a slave and lived among the slaves, but I couldn't bring myself to act like one of them. One day, Sirah asked me, in the evening, when the other slaves socialize and enjoy each other's company, "Why do you always sit alone in your tent?" I answered her, "I am still thinking about what you told me. I am wondering if I truly have the soul of a slave. Because I feel different from them, I can't join them, so I have to sit by myself." "I have to sit by myself, too," she confessed. "My dowry was very large, and my husband only married me because of the money. He doesn't actually want me. But what every woman truly wants is to be desired. Because he doesn't want me, and because I haven't been able to have any children, I must sit alone. If I were a man, I would rather die than be a slave like this. But the traditions of our tribe force women into slavery. What do you think of me by now? I suddenly asked her. Do I have the soul of a man, or do I have the soul of a slave? Do you have a desire to repay the fair debts you owe in Babylon? She parried. Yes, I have the desire, but I see no way. If you contentedly let the years slip by and make no effort to repay, then you have nothing but the shameful soul of a slave. No man is anything else if he cannot respect himself, and no man can respect himself if he does not repay his honest debts. But what can I do when I am just a slave in Syria? Then stay a slave in Syria, you weakling. I am not a weakling, I denied hotly. Then prove it. How? Doesn't your great king fight his enemies in every way he can and with every force he has? Your debts are your enemies. They ran you out of Babylon. You left them alone, and they grew too strong for you. If you had fought them like a man, you could have conquered them and been honored among the townspeople. But you did not have the soul to fight them. Look how your pride has gone down, until you are now a slave in Syria. I thought a lot about her unkind accusations. I prepared many defensive phrases to prove that I was not a slave at heart. However, I never got the chance to use them. 3 days later, Sarah's maid took me to see her mistress. My mother is very sick again, she said. Saddle the 2 best camels in my husband's herd. Tie on water skins and saddlebags for a long journey. The maid will give you food at the kitchen tent. I packed the camels, wondering a great deal about the large amount of provisions the maid provided. After all, her mother lived less than a day's journey away. The maid rode the rear camel that followed us, and I led the camel of my mistress. It was just getting dark when we reached her mother's house. Sarah dismissed the maid and said to me, Dabasir, do you have the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave? The soul of a free man, I insisted. Now is your chance to prove it. Your master has been drinking heavily, and his chiefs are in a stupor. Take these camels and make your escape. Here in this bag are some of your master's clothes to disguise yourself. I will say that you stole the camels and ran away while I was visiting my sick mother. You have the soul of a queen, I told her. I wish very much that I could lead you to happiness. Happiness does not await a runaway wife who seeks it in far lands among strange people, she responded. Go your own way. May the gods of the desert protect you, because the journey is long and completely barren of food or water. I needed no further urging. I thanked her warmly and hurried away into the night. I did not know this strange country, and I only had a dim idea of the direction toward Babylon. Still, I struck out bravely across the desert toward the hills. I rode 1 camel and led the other. I traveled all that night and all the next day. I was urged on by the knowledge of the terrible fate that awaited slaves who stole their master's property and tried to escape. Late that afternoon, I reached a rough country that was just as uninhabitable as the desert. The sharp rocks bruised the feet of my faithful camels, and soon they were picking their way slowly and painfully. I met neither man nor beast along the way, and I could well understand why they avoided this inhospitable land. From then on, it was a journey that very few men ever lived to talk about. We plodded along day after day. Our food and water ran out. The heat of the sun was merciless. At the end of the 9th day, I slid from the back of my camel. I felt that I was too weak to ever remount, and I was certain I would die lost in this abandoned country. I stretched out upon the ground and slept. I did not wake up until the very first gleam of daylight. I sat up and looked around. There was a refreshing coolness in the morning air. My camels lay dejected not far away. All around me was a vast wasteland of broken country covered with rock, sand, and thorny bushes. There was no sign of water, and absolutely nothing for a man or a camel to eat. Could it be that I was facing my end in this peaceful quiet? My mind was clearer than it had ever been before. My body now seemed to be of very little importance. My parched and bleeding lips, my dry and swollen tongue, and my empty stomach had all lost their supreme agonies from the day before. I looked across into the uninviting distance, and once again the question came to me. Do I have the soul of a slave or the soul of a free man? Then, with perfect clarity, I realized something. If I had the soul of a slave, I should just give up, lie down in the desert, and die. That would be a fitting end for a runaway slave. But if I had the soul of a free man, what then? Surely I would force my way back to Babylon. I would repay the people who had trusted me. I would bring happiness to my wife who truly loved me, and I would bring peace and contentment to my parents. Your debts are your enemies who have run you out of Babylon, Sarah had said. Yes, it was true. Why had I refused to stand my ground like a man? Why had I allowed my wife to go back to her father? Then a strange thing happened. The whole world seemed to be a different color. It felt as though I had been looking at it through a colored stone that was suddenly taken away. At last I saw the true values in life. Die in the desert? Not me. With a new vision, I saw exactly what I needed to do. First, I would go back to Babylon and face every man to whom I owed an unpaid debt. I would tell them that after years of wandering and misfortune, I had come back to pay my debts as fast as the gods would allow. Next, I would make a home for my wife, and I would become a citizen that my parents could be proud of. My debts were my enemies, but the men I owed were my friends. They were my friends because they had trusted me and believed in me. I staggered weakly to my feet. What did hunger matter? What did thirst matter? They were just minor incidents on the road to Babylon. The soul of a free man surged within me. I was going back to conquer my enemies and reward my friends. I thrilled with this great resolve. The glazed eyes of my camels brightened at the new tone in my husky voice. After many attempts and with great effort, they finally got to their feet. With pitiful perseverance, they pushed on toward the north. Something deep inside me said that we would find Babylon there. We found water. We passed into a more fertile country filled with grass and fruit. We eventually found the trail to Babylon. We found it because the soul of a free man looks at life as a series of problems to be solved, and then solves them. Meanwhile, the soul of a slave simply whines, "What can I do when I am just a slave?" How about you, Tarkad? Does your empty stomach make your head exceptionally clear? Are you ready to take the road that leads back to self-respect? Can you see the world in its true colors? Do you have the desire to pay your honest debts, no matter how many there may be? Do you want to once again be a man respected in Babylon? Moisture came to the eyes of the youth. He rose eagerly to his knees. You have shown me a vision. I already feel the soul of a free man surging within me. But how did things go for you upon your return? Tarkad questioned Dabasir. Where the determination is, the way can be found. Dabasir replied. I now had the determination, so I set out to find a way. First, I visited every single man to whom I was in debt. I begged for their patience until I could earn the money to repay them. Most of them met me gladly. A few of them insulted me, but others actually offered to help me. One man in particular gave me the exact help I needed. It was Mathan, the gold lender. He learned that I had been a camel tender in Syria. So, he sent me to old Nebater, the camel trader. Nebater had just been commissioned by our good king to purchase many herds of healthy camels for a great expedition. I put my knowledge of camels to very good use working with him. Gradually, I was able to repay every copper and every piece of silver. Then, at last, I could hold my head high. I finally felt that I was an honorable man among men. And now, Tarkad, you have your bag of trade gold. Will you use it to trade wisely in Damascus, or will you throw it away on a camel race like a slave running from his duty? Tarkad took the 3 gold coins and slipped them back into his leather bag. He stood up, his posture straight, his heart filled with a new and powerful resolve. I will trade in Damascus, Dabasir, Tarkad said. And when we return to Babylon, I will face my creditors. Good, Dabasir said, clapping him on the back. Let us water the camels. We have a long road ahead. Chapter 7. The Debt Cleansing. The dusty road from Damascus was long, hot, and choked with the grit of 100 dry miles. But as the merchant caravan finally crested the southern hills overlooking the Euphrates, the heavy brass bells hanging from the lead camels began to ring with a triumphant, rhythmic cadence that matched the beating of Tarkad's heart. For many days Tarkad had ridden his horse alongside the lumbering beasts, his body weary but his mind clearer than it had ever been. He had gone to Damascus as a desperate young man fleeing his own shadow, but under the guidance of Dabasir and the protective eye of Arkad's caravan, he had worked hard and traded wisely. He had adhered strictly to the rules of investment he had been taught, seeking the counsel of veteran merchants, and refusing the temptations of quick, unearned wealth. Now, he returned to the golden city of Babylon not as a beggar, but as a man of business. Securely packed in his saddlebags were 2 heavy leather pouches filled with silver and gold, his honest share of the caravan's trading profits. Yet, as the massive bronze gates of Babylon loomed closer, casting their long shadows over the arriving travelers, Tarkad felt no desire to seek out the noisy taverns or purchase the fine, dyed robes that he once would have craved. The memory of his hunger was still fresh, but fresher still was the memory of Dabasir's words. Your debts are yours, enemies who have run you out of Babylon. Instead of hiding in the winding, narrow alleys of the city's poorer quarters, Tarkad guided his horse straight toward the bustling central merchant district. The smells of roasting meat, sweet sesame cakes, and fresh barley beer wafted from the eating houses, but Tarkad kept his eyes fixed ahead. He did not stop until he reached the heavy timbered doorway of the shop belonging to Mathan, the gold lender. The shop was quiet, smelling of old parchment, drying clay, and the faint, metallic scent of copper and silver coins. Mathan sat behind his heavy wooden table, his scales resting beside him. He was carefully writing in a large ledger by the light of a small oil lamp. When the shadow of Tarkad's tall figure crossed the threshold, the gold lender looked up, his sharp eyes narrowing as he assessed the young man. Tarkad, Mathan said, his voice level and cool. You returned to Babylon. Your horse looks strong and well-fed, and you hold your head straight upon your shoulders. Did Damascus offer you the fortune you sought? Tarkad stepped into the shop, unbuckled the 2 leather pouches from his belt, and placed them onto the wooden table with a heavy, metallic clink. Damascus was profitable, Mathan, Tarkad said quietly. I worked hard, I watched the markets, and I listened to the wisdom of those who knew the laws of gold. But I did not come here today to boast of my profits, nor did I come to borrow more. I am here to face my debts. I want to write them down, every single one of them, and I want to find a way to repay every copper I owe. A warm, rare smile softened the stern lines of Mathan's face. He set down his reed pen and gestured toward a shelf where several damp, gray clay tablets lay ready for the stylus. A man who wishes to pay his debts is a man who has found his soul, Mathan said softly. Too many men run from their creditors, thinking only of borrowing more, until they are swallowed by the desert or sold into the slave pens. Sit, Tarkad. Let us carve your path to freedom. Tarkad sat on a low wooden stool, and Mathan placed a fresh, soft clay tablet and a sharp wooden stylus before him. For the next hour, the young man dug deep into his memories of the dark years, listing every person he had borrowed from during his days of desperate hunger and foolish extravagance. Let us be precise, Tarkad, Mathan instructed, pointing to the wet clay. An honest man does not hide from the numbers. Write down the name of every creditor, and next to it, the exact amount of silver and copper you owe them. With a steady hand, Tarkad began to carve the records. First, he wrote the name of Farah, the cloth weaver, to whom he owed 2 pieces of silver and 6 pieces of copper for a fine cloak he had bought to look wealthy. Next was Sinjar, the couch maker, whom he owed 1 piece of silver. Then came Ahmar, a young man he had once called his closest friend, who had lent him 3 pieces of silver and 1 piece of copper when Tarkad's purse was completely empty. He carved the name of Zankar, another former companion, who had trusted him with 4 silver pieces and 7 coppers. Next was Askamir, to whom he owed 1 silver piece and 3 coppers. Then came Haransur, the jewel maker, who had sold him a small trinket on credit for 6 pieces of silver and 2 coppers. He added Direbeker, an old friend of his father's, who had lent him 4 pieces of silver and 1 piece of copper out of respect for his family. Then he wrote the name of Alkahad, the house owner, who had rented him a small room and whom he owed 14 pieces of silver in unpaid rent. He did not omit Mathan himself, carving the gold lender's name and the debt of 9 pieces of silver. Finally, he wrote the name of Birjik, the farmer, who had sold him grain and was owed 1 piece of silver and 7 coppers. When the list was complete, Tarkat stared at the names and numbers carved into the grey clay. The total was daunting: 119 pieces of silver and 141 pieces of copper. It was a massive sum for a young man who had so recently been starving. Mathan leaned forward, tapping the edge of the tablet. To clear this weight from your shoulders, Tarkat, you must follow a strict and ancient formula. It is the plan of the 3 portions, and under my advice you will commit to it. It has led many men out of the deepest ruins of debt, and into a life of wealth and self-respect. Hear it well. First, the plan provides for your own future. 1/10 of all you earn, from this day forward, must be set aside as your own to keep. It is your savings, and you must never spend it, for it is the seed of your future wealth. A man who keeps gold and silver in his purse that he does not need to spend is good to his family, loyal to his king, and walks with a proud heart. But the man who has nothing is bitter, unkind to his family, and indifferent to his king. Second, the plan provides that you must support your household. 7/10 of all you earn shall be used to provide a home, food to eat, clothes to wear, and a bit extra for the enjoyment of life. You must live strictly within this limit. It is the core of the plan. You must never spend more than 7/10, and you must never buy what you cannot pay for out of this portion. Third, the plan provides that your debts shall be paid. Therefore, each time you receive your earnings, 2/10 of the total shall be divided honorably, fairly, and proportionally among all those who have trusted you and to whom you are indebted. In this way, every creditor will be paid in full over time, and your self-respect will return. Tarkat looked at the tablet, his brow furrowed. But Mathan, will my creditors accept this? Some of them are very angry with me. They have threatened me, and they want all of their gold immediately. 2/10 divided among 10 men will mean only a few coppers for each of them every month. Will they not throw the coins in my face? A creditor is a human being, Tarkat. Mathan replied with a knowing smile. He wants his gold, yes. But he knows that a debtor who hides in the dark will pay him nothing. He would far rather receive a small, guaranteed payment every month from a man of honor who faces him directly, than receive empty promises and see no coins at all. Go to them. Face them like a free man. Show them this tablet, explain the plan, and give them your promise. Tarkat stood up, holding the wet clay tablet in his hands. He felt a strange new strength in his chest. I will do as you say, Mathan. I will face my enemies and reward my friends. Before he began his rounds, Tarkat sought out his wife, Vera. In the darkest days of his poverty, when the creditors had swarmed his home and there was no bread to eat, she had been forced to return to the house of her father in shame. Tarkat went to her father's house, not to beg, but to show her the profits he had earned and the plan he had carved on clay. Vera looked at the tablet, and then at Tarkat's steady eyes. Seeing the change in him, she chose to return to his side, determined to help him rebuild their home and live within the 7/10 of his earnings. With his wife's support, Tarkat set out into the streets of Babylon to visit his creditors. His first stop was the stall of Kauskar, the food merchant, who had once chased him from the eating house when Tarkat had tried to beg for a scrap of bread. When Kauskar saw Tarkat approaching, his face hardened, and he crossed his arms over his chest. I have no food for you, Tarkat! Kauskar shouted across the busy street. And I have no patience left. Repay the coppers you owe me before you dare show your face here again. Tarkat did not flinch or turn away. He stepped up to the wooden counter, placed the clay tablet before the merchant, and looked him in the eye. Kauskar, I have returned from Damascus. I have worked hard, and I have a plan to repay my debts. I owe you 10 copper pieces. I cannot pay you the entire sum today, but I have committed to a plan under Mathan's guidance. Every time the moon is full, I will bring you 2/10 of my earnings, divided fairly among my creditors. Today, I bring you 2 copper pieces. It is the first of many payments, and I give you my word as a free man that I will return every month until the debt is cleared. Kouskor looked at the 2 copper coins sitting on the counter, then at the clay tablet, and finally at Tarkad's calm, resolute face. The anger slowly drained from the merchant's eyes, replaced by quiet astonishment. You actually returned to pay me? Kouskor mumbled, picking up the coppers. Many men borrow and run, never to be seen again. To see a debtor return with coins and a written plan is a rare thing. Very well, Tarkad. I accept your payment, and I will mark it in my ledger. May the gods speed your work. Encouraged by this first success, Tarkad walked through the city to find Ahmar, the friend he had once borrowed 3 pieces of silver and a copper from. Ahmar was sitting outside a leather shop, and when he saw Tarkad, his expression grew bitter. So, the runaway has returned, Ahmar said scornfully. Do you come to borrow more, or do you have the silver you took from me under the guise of friendship? Tarkad felt a hot flush of shame, but he stood his ground. Ahmar, I was wrong to run, and I was wrong to neglect my debt to you. I have no excuses. But I have returned to make it right. I have a plan to pay every man I owe, and I will deal fairly with all. I cannot pay you in full today, but I'd bring you your share of my first earnings. He handed Ahmar the silver and copper coins that represented his portion. Ahmar looked at the coins, then spat on the ground, reviling Tarkad for his slowness. This is but a pittance compared to what you took. You expect me to wait months for the rest? I expect nothing but your patience, Ahmar, Tarkad said quietly. I will pay you this portion every month, and no more. If you do not wish to accept it, I will distribute it to the others, but I assure you that if you are patient, you will be paid in full. Seeing Tarkad's determination, Ahmar grumbled and pocketed the coins, turning his back but offering no further insults. Next, Tarkad sought out Byrjik, the farmer, who was selling grain from a wagon near the market. When Tarkad explained the plan and handed him his share, Byrjik was so pleased that his eyes filled with tears. You are an honest man, Tarkad! I didst badly need this help, for the drought has been hard on my crops. I will gladly accept whatever you can bring each month. However, not all visits were easy. When Tarkad visited Alkahad, the house owner, the older man flew into a rage. Alkahad was a wealthy, disagreeable landlord who had threatened to have Tarkad arrested when he lived in his rooms. 3 coppers? Alkahad shrieked, waving the coins in the air. This is an insult. I want my 14 pieces of silver now. I will make trouble for you in the courts, Tarkad. I will have you thrown into the slave pens. Tarkad remained calm, remembering Mathan's advice. Alkahad, if you throw me into the slave pens, I will earn nothing, and you will receive nothing. But if I am permitted to work, well-fed and without worry, I will be able to pay you every month until the debt is cleared. The choice is yours. Take this portion, or receive nothing at all. Alkahad stared at Tarkad, his mouth opening and closing in frustration. Finally, he snatched the coins and muttered, Take your tablet and go, Tarkad. But if you fail to bring me my coins next month, I will have the guards at your door. By the time the sun began to set, casting a golden-red glow over the city of Babylon, Tarkad's purse was much lighter, but his heart felt as light as air. He had visited every creditor on his list, and though some had reviled him, all had accepted their coins. He had faced his enemies, and he had proven to himself that he had the soul of a free man. Tablet No. 4. Again the moon shines full in the velvet sky above Babylon. I, Tarkad, have worked hard with a free and focused mind. My good wife, Vera, has supported my intentions, helping me manage our home with great care. Because of our wise determination, I have earned during the past moon, buying camels of sound wind and good legs for Nebater, the great trader commissioned by our King Sargon to purchase herds for the royal expedition, the sum of 19 pieces of silver. This sum I have divided strictly according to the plan. 1/10, which is 1 piece of silver and 9 coppers, have I set aside to keep as my own, placing it in my leather chest where no man hath claim. 7/10, which is 13 silver pieces and 3 coppers, have I divided with my good wife to pay for our living, food, and rent. 2/10, which is 3 silver pieces and 8 coppers, have I divided among my creditors as evenly as could be done in coppers. I did not see Ahmar on my rounds, but I left his share with his wife, who thanked me. Bajik, the farmer, was so pleased when I handed him his coins that he would kiss my hand in gratitude. Old Alcahad alone was grouchy, muttering that I must pay faster. To which I replied that if I were permitted to be well fed and not worried, that alone would enable me to earn more and pay faster. All the others thanked me and spoke well of my efforts. Therefore, at the end of one moon, my indebtedness is reduced by almost 4 pieces of silver, and I possess almost 2 pieces of silver besides, which are mine to keep. My heart is lighter than it hath been for many years. Again the moon shines full. I have worked hard during the past weeks, but with poor success. Few camels have I been able to purchase for Nebater, for other buyers were active in the markets. Only 11 pieces of silver have I earned. Nevertheless, my good wife and I have stood firmly by the plan. We have bought no new raiment, and we have eaten little but herbs and simple bread, refusing to touch the 1/10 that belongs to our future. Again I paid ourselves 1/10 of the 11 pieces of silver, and we lived upon the 7/10. I was surprised when I visited the creditors. Ahmar, who had previously reviled me, commended my payment, even though it was very small. Bajik did the same, offering me a basket of fresh onions. Alcahad flew into a rage when he saw the few coppers I brought, but when I told him he could give back his portion if he did not wish to accept it, he quieted down and kept the coins. The others, as before, were content and wished me well. Again the moon shines full, and I am greatly rejoiced. I intercepted a fine herd of camels arriving from the north and bought many sound ones for Nebater. Therefore, my earnings for this moon were 42 pieces of silver. This moon, my wife and myself have bought much-needed sandals and new raiment, for our old clothes were in tatters. Also, we have dined well on roasted goat meat and fowl, celebrating the goodness of the plan. More than 8 pieces of silver we have paid to our creditors, dividing it honorably. Even Alcahad did not protest when I handed him his share, but took it with a nod of his head. Great indeed is the plan, for it letteth us out of debt, and giveth us wealth which is ours to keep. 3 times the moon has been full since I last carved upon this clay. Each time, I paid to myself 1/10 of all I earned. Each time, my good wife and I have lived upon 7/10, even though at times when work was slow it was difficult. Each time, I have paid to my creditors 2/10. In my leather purse, I now have 21 pieces of silver that are mine, untouched and secure. It mocketh my head to stand straight upon my shoulders, and it mocketh me proud to walk among my friends and neighbors. My wife keepeth our home well, and she is becomingly gowned in clean, simple cloth. We are happy to live together, no longer haunted by the fear of the knock at the door. The plan is of untold value. Hath it not made an honorable man of a desperate debtor? Tablet No. Again the moon shines full, and as I look upon the night sky, I remember that it is long since I carved upon the clay. 12 moons, in truth, have come and gone. But this day, I will not neglect my record, because upon this day, I have paid the last copper of my debts. This is the day upon which my good wife and my thankful self celebrate with great feasting, for our determination hath been achieved, and the chains of our past are broken forever. Many things occurred upon my final visit to my creditors that I shall long remember. Ahmar, who had once spat upon the ground and called me a thief, looked upon me with respect. He begged my forgiveness for his unkind words and said that I was, of all others, the man he most desired to have as a friend and partner in his business. Old Alcahad, the landlord whom I had feared so much, smiled and patted my shoulder. You were once like a piece of soft clay, Tarkad, to be pressed and molded by any hand that touched you, he said. But now you are like a piece of solid bronze, capable of holding a sharp edge. If you need a silver or gold at any time to expand your business, come to me, and I will gladly lend to you. Nor is he the only one who holdeth me in high regard. Many merchants in the market speak deferentially to me now, and my good wife looketh upon me with a light in her eyes that does make a man have confidence in himself. Yet I know it is the plan that hath made my success. It hath enabled me to pay all my debts, and, at the same time, to jingle both gold and silver in my purse. I do commend it to all who wish to get ahead. For truly, if it will enable a starving, desperate debtor to pay his debts and build a fortune, will it not aid any man to find his independence? Nor am I, myself, finished with it, for I am convinced that if I follow it further, it will make me rich and honored among the wealthiest men of Babylon.